I'm Kike Ojo, and I'm a native of the city of Toronto. Toronto is a cultural mosaic, but most people don't know about the African and Caribbean influences here. Take a trip with me as I explore our influences, our perspectives in my neighborhood, my city, I'm telling you, baby, my Toronto.
So join us as we explore the dynamic impact of the influence of African culture. The influence of African culture can be seen and felt in every country of the world. And Canada is no exception. While Toronto is a world capital for business and culture, it's also home to many immigrants, notably from Africa and the diaspora. Half of Canada's black population lives in the Toronto area. And while Toronto's black history is long, it's not necessarily known. Wanting to learn more about her hometown from historian, Kike heads to one of the city's oldest black institutions, the First Baptist Church of Toronto.
So, Ms. Sadler, I have lived in Toronto my whole life, but when I think about what I know of Toronto's history, it doesn't include African descent people.
Well, I think, one of the biggest ones is the fact that we were here. And we were here doing and being and living our lives like everyone else was, to the best of our ability. We contributed to the development and the founding of roads, to business. Some of the earliest business owners were actually of African origin. Mm-hmm. We contributed to every sector of this society. There were African Canadian pioneers in all of those fields from the earliest times. Their contribution, unfortunately, is often overlooked because the greater community tends to be of European ancestry, and we hear much more about those stories.
One of the questions we want to explore is, what would you say is the African influence? I mean, what does that mean to you?
I think it's important to talk about the African descent history in Canada. And the very first African that came to the eastern shores of Canada, was named Matthew de Costa. He was an interpreter. He was traveling with the French explorer Samuel de Champlain. So if Matthew had not been with him, it would have been impossible for the French to have been able to develop a trade relationship with Europe. Which of course ultimately meant Toronto. African descent people were here as free people. They were also here as enslaved people. And I think that one of the things that people might find remarkable or interesting is that they helped to build Toronto's first parliament buildings, which were on Parliament Street, now destroyed. During the War of 1812, at least 10% of all defenders on the Canadian side and the American side were of African origin. So they've been here from the beginning, helping to defend, contributing to the economy, serving as professionals. Among the first workers, the first doctors, the first ice house keepers, the first people to come up with public transportation. My mother's family arrived in Ontario on the Underground Railroad, probably around 1840. So in essence, my family has been in this country since 1783, and I'm not the only one. Currently, half of all of Canada's people of African origin reside in this area, half of them. And while some of them may be from long-term Indigenous roots, there are so many stories because our community is so diverse. We're all here interacting with our different foods and music and whatnot. We are Caribana, but we are much much more than Carabana.
Coming up,
Wow. Okay. Hi, Pero.
No, this one, the one I did first.
Look at that. Look at my masterpiece. So I understand this is the house favorite.
Very unique taste.
Woo!